RegTech versus rapid regulatory changes, navigating uncertainty. Rapid and unpredictable changes in laws and regulations have become a defining challenge of our era. From sudden trade tariffs to emergency public health mandates, rules can shift with little notice, often faster than technology systems can adapt. This deep dive explores how regulatory technology, RegTech, users can navigate the uncertainty caused by rapid regulatory changes, with real-world examples from the US, EU, UK, and Asia. We will analyze the problems faced, examine case studies of RegTech systems under pressure, and highlight technical and procedural solutions in development. As reported by industry experts, RegTech is all about minimizing uncertainty, making this a critical discussion. Part 1. The problem: rapid-fire rule changes. Regulations can change overnight, catching companies in their compliance tools off guard. A dramatic example came during the Trump administration's sudden tariff announcements. In one case, a new tariff policy was enacted so quickly that U.S. customs software lagged behind. A glitch prevented importers from applying new tariff exemptions, disrupting trade until the system was fixed. Such incidents underscore the core problem. RegTech systems may become outdated in a matter of days when rules change abruptly. Why is this a big deal? Consider that globally there are hundreds of regulatory updates issued every single day. Compliance platforms must digest constant amendments to laws on finance, data privacy, trade, health, and more. If a RegTech platform's rule database isn't updated the moment a new regulation takes effect, the outputs can be wrong or misleading. This isn't a hypothetical edge case. It happens whenever policy outpaces programming. Part 2. Impact on RegTech companies, obsolescence overnight. For RegTech companies and software providers, the stakes are high. Their value proposition is delivering up-to-date compliance information and process automation. If their software can't incorporate a major regulatory change immediately, it can become redundant almost overnight. Clients might find that a once-trusted tool no longer reflects the law as of this morning, tarnishing the RegTech firm's reputation. Business risk: a sudden change, like a new sanction or tariff, might require an urgent software patch. Development and QA teams at RegTech firms scramble to update rule libraries, often working round the clock. In the interim, parts of the software may need to be disabled to avoid incorrect guidance. Competitive pressure: if one RegTech platform is slow to update, users may turn to competitors or manual solutions. The cost of regulatory uncertainty is high. World Economic Forum notes that technologies like data analytics and AI are being leveraged to streamline compliance and reduce this uncertainty. RegTech providers feel intense pressure to harness such tech and deliver agility. Real-life case studies highlight the vulnerability. During the Brexit transition in the UK, for example, financial compliance systems had to be reconfigured repeatedly as trade and data regulations evolved in real time. Some software vendors had to roll out multiple updates in short succession to align with the shifting legal landscape. Similarly, when India demonetized its high-value currency notes overnight in 2016, digital payment compliance tools had to adapt within hours to new cash thresholds and verification norms. These instances show that RegTech firms live on a regulatory fault line. Any quake in policy can shake their product's foundations. Part 3. Impact on users and citizens, misinformation risk. For the users of RegTech, businesses, compliance officers, and even ordinary citizens relying on information portals, rapid changes can create dangerous confusion. If a regulation changes today, but a compliance system still reflects yesterday's rules, users might be misled. Incorrect compliance guidance. Imagine a small exporter using an automated tariff classification tool. If tariffs were hiked overnight and the tool hasn't updated, it might undercalculate the duty owed. The exporter could underpay and later face penalties, all because they trusted outdated software that limited manual override. In theory, a well-trained compliance team can catch such discrepancies. But in practice, manual review capacity is limited. Organizations lean on RegTech to handle volume. When the system's output is suspect, there may simply not be enough human experts available to double-check every transaction or report for errors. Public confusion. Sometimes citizens use government apps or online wizards to understand new rules for taxes, travel restrictions, benefits, etc. If those systems lag, people receive wrong information. A recent illustrative case: when a new Corporate Transparency Act rule in the US was scheduled to take effect. Conflicting court orders meant some online guidance portals showed the rule as active, while others flagged it as on hold. Indeed, uncertainty around the Corporate Transparency Act grew because one injunction against its enforcement was lifted while another injunction remained in effect. The average user had no easy way to know if they needed to comply yet or not. The risk of misinformation isn't just hypothetical. According to Bloomberg Law, thousands of companies were left scrambling after the EU's top court invalidated the Privacy Shield Data Sharing Pact in 2020, instantly altering data transfer rules. Many businesses were initially unaware and kept operating as if the old framework held, exposing them to legal risk. This example shows how quickly yesterday's compliance assurance becomes today's compliance gap. Part 4. Legal gray zones, when rules face challenges. An added complication in jurisdictions like the United States is that not every new rule is set in stone. Some face immediate legal challenges. A regulation might be announced and even officially effective, but if courts deem it unconstitutional or issue an injunction, it becomes unenforceable unless and until the courts resolve the matter. This creates a twilight zone for compliance. Conflicting signals. Businesses might receive a regulator's bulletin saying Rule X is now law, only to hear news that a judge temporarily blocked Rule X pending review. Which signal should a RegTech system follow? Hardcoding the rule could mislead users if the court halts enforcement. Ignoring the rule isn't right either, since it could ultimately be upheld. Case study: OSHA vaccine mandate. A notable example was the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration's emergency vaccine mandate for large employers in 2021. The rule was announced and a compliance deadline set, so many HR compliance systems were updated to guide employers on tracking vaccinations and tests. However, a court stay paused the mandate before the deadline, and the Supreme Court later struck it down. Companies using automated compliance tools were left in limbo. Should they continue implementation or stand down? Many systems had to add disclaimers or pause flags on the feature, pending the legal outcome. Constitutional challenges. In the U.S., federal agencies and even state legislatures sometimes push regulations that courts later find unconstitutional. For instance, parts of certain travel bans and eviction moratoriums were invalidated by courts after causing weeks of compliance confusion. RegTech users must be aware that legal validity can be a moving target. It's not just an American problem either. In the EU, the Court of Justice can invalidate regulations or directives, as with Privacy Shield, and in countries like India, Supreme Courts can strike down government regulations for violating rights. Each scenario leaves a compliance vacuum where technology must adapt on the fly to legal whiplash. In these gray zones, communication to users becomes crucial. Some advanced RegTech platforms flash warnings like "Regulation under legal review," "Enforceability uncertain," to alert users to double-check manually. This kind of feature is still evolving, but it hints at a future where RegTech not only tracks laws, but also lawsuits about those laws. Part 5. Adapting strategies, staying ahead of uncertainty. Given the challenges above, how can RegTech users, and the companies building RegTech, manage and adapt to regulatory whiplash? The solutions span technology, process, and strategy. Part 5.1. Real-time regulatory monitoring. Leading RegTech solutions now integrate real-time feeds of regulatory changes. Instead of waiting for a periodic software update, these platforms pull updates from government gazettes, regulatory websites, and legal databases as soon as they're published. For example, compliance software for financial institutions might subscribe to updates from the SEC, FINRA, the European Banking Authority, etc. When a rule changes or new guidance is issued, an alert is generated within the software. Users might see a notification, "New regulatory change detected," click to review implications. This at least flags the issue immediately, even if full automation of the new rule takes more time. Many companies pair this with a rapid response team, experts who spring into action and update the RegTech system's rules engine or data sets within hours. Think of it as an emergency patch for compliance. According to industry reports, this approach was invaluable when sanctions against Russia escalated quickly in 2022. Banks with real-time monitoring got alerts on new sanctioned entity lists and could halt transactions involving those names the same day, whereas others without such agility risked illegal transfers. Part 5.2. Machine-readable regulations in AI. A promising technical solution is the use of machine-readable regulations in artificial intelligence to speed up updates. Under a regulation as code paradigm, laws are published in a format that software can ingest automatically. FinTech Global notes that the concept is straightforward. Regulations written for direct interpretation by machines, enabling software to execute compliance rules automatically. While not all jurisdictions provide laws in a neat data format yet, progress is being made. Additionally, AI and natural language processing are being used to parse traditional legal text. Advanced RegTech platforms employ AI to read a new law or policy document and then recommend compliance rule changes in the software. For example, if a new anti-money laundering law raises the threshold for reporting transactions from $5,000 to $10,000, an AI can flag that change and even auto-adjust the threshold in the transaction monitoring system, subject to human review. This drastically reduces the lag between law on paper and rules in code. According to a RegTech white paper by Be Informed, machine-readable regulations, MRR, enable proactive monitoring of changes and rapid adjustments to compliance processes. By structuring laws into data that computers understand, organizations can update their systems in sync with new requirements, resulting in fewer errors, more flexibility, and timely compliance. In one real-world pilot, a financial regulator provided a machine-readable rule set for reporting requirements, and banks' compliance software updated overnight with minimal human intervention. This kind of automation is still emerging, but it points to a future where RegTech updates might be as automatic as your phone's app updates. Part 5.3. Agile System Architecture. From a software design perspective, RegTech companies are embracing modular and agile architectures. Instead of hard-coding rules deep into the system, which makes updates cumbersome, modern compliance software often uses rule engines or configuration files that can be updated independently. This means a new rule might be deployed as simply as loading a new config, without needing to rewrite the entire application. Cloud-based RegTech solutions have an edge here. They can push updates to all users instantaneously, the same way a web service updates for everyone at once, as opposed to on-premises software where each client might have to install a patch. Some RegTech providers are also versioning their rule sets. Users can toggle between, say, Regulation version 2.0 proposed and Regulation version 1.0 current within the tool. This is useful if a rule is announced but not yet effective, or if it's in that legal gray zone we discussed. The system effectively can run scenarios, what compliance would look like under the new rule versus the old. Such features help companies prepare in advance. What if the law changes next month, and not be flat-footed on day one of a new policy? Part 5.4. Human Oversight and Expertise. No matter how much automation improves, human judgment remains essential in times of uncertainty. RegTech users are learning to treat these tools as decision support, not absolute gospel, especially during tumultuous regulatory periods. Best practices emerging in the industry include maintaining a compliance task force. Businesses that are heavily regulated, banks, healthcare providers, etc., often have a standing committee that convenes whenever a major change hits. Their job is to interpret the new rule, decide on interim manual controls if needed, and coordinate with the RegTech vendor on updates. This ensures there's a short window of informed manual oversight before the software catches up. Cross-checking multiple sources. Users are encouraged to use more than one source for critical compliance info when a sudden change occurs. For instance, if a tax law changes, a company might cross-check its tax compliance software's guidance against official government FAQs or an alert from a law firm. Redundant checks can catch discrepancies early. Training and awareness. An often overlooked aspect is simply training users to handle uncertainty. Compliance officers and even operational staff need to know that. When an alert says new rule implemented or conversely system update pending, they should exercise caution. Forward-thinking organizations run drills similar to IT disaster recovery drills for compliance. For example, they simulate a sudden Regulatory change and practice how their people and systems respond. This builds muscle memory for the real thing. Part 5.5. Collaboration with regulators. Regulators themselves don't want chaos. There is a trend toward more communication between RegTech firms and regulators. In some jurisdictions, regulatory agencies have sandbox programs or tech sprints where they work with tech companies to devise better ways to disseminate rules. For instance, the UK's Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, held a tech sprint on digital regulatory reporting, exploring how rules could be machine-readable and automatically tested. In the EU, after seeing the post-Privacy Shield confusion, regulators provided more guidance and even grace periods before enforcement of new data transfer rules, acknowledging that instant compliance is unrealistic. RegTech users benefit from this collaboration when regulators offer clear, centralized update channels. Imagine a regulator-operated feed that instantly pushes out a structured notice. Regulation Y, Section 4, Paragraph 2. Threshold value changed from January 1st, 2025. If RegTech systems can subscribe to such feeds, the update process becomes smoother. We're beginning to see this in sectors like tax, with digital tax administration, and finance, and it's likely to expand. Part 6. Global Snapshot. Uncertainty across jurisdictions. Regulatory uncertainty is a global phenomenon, but it plays out differently across jurisdictions. United States. The U.S. is known for frequent regulatory oscillations, especially when administrations change. A vivid example is trade policy. Tariff rates changed multiple times via executive orders, keeping import-export compliance tools on their toes. Additionally, the U.S. legal system's checks and balances mean new rules can face injunctions, as with the Corporate Transparency Act's reporting rules being partially paused by courts. RegTech users in the US have to monitor both the Federal Register and the court dockets. European Union. The EU tends to give longer lead times for regulatory changes, e.g. GDPR had a 2-year transition. But court decisions can cause abrupt shifts. The invalidation of the EU-US Privacy Shield is one case that left companies scrambling mid-year. EU member states also implement directives on different timelines, so a RegTech system must track not one law but 27 versions of it. On the upside, the EU has been investing in RegTech-friendly initiatives like machine-readable reporting for financial regulations to harmonize compliance. United Kingdom. Post-Brexit, Britain became a real-world test of handling rapid regulatory divergence. UK-based firms suddenly had to follow UK-specific rules and EU rules for operations in Europe that were no longer identical. This affected everything from data protection, UK GDPR versus EU GDPR, to financial services. UK regulators have issued a flurry of updates to replace EU regulations with domestic ones. RegTech solutions in the UK often had to push back-to-back updates around the end of 2020 and throughout 2021 as the Brexit backup versions of regulations came online. The experience has actually spurred innovation. UK firms are among leaders in adopting agile compliance tools to toggle between regulatory regimes in Asia-Pacific. The regulatory pace varies. In some places like China, changes can be extremely sudden and strictly enforced. In 2021, Chinese officials announced a ban on cryptocurrency transactions virtually overnight, forcing fintech companies and exchanges to shut down services immediately. RegTech systems in those firms had to be quickly reconfigured to block crypto-related activities lest they run afoul of the new ban. In contrast, jurisdictions like Singapore or Australia generally announce changes with consultation papers and future effective dates, giving time for tech adaptation. However, even in these markets, external events, like FAFSA updates to anti-money laundering standards, can impose quick compliance deadlines. The lesson in Asia is that preparedness must account for both the possibility of sudden edicts and the complexity of navigating diverse national rules. Despite regional differences, one common theme emerges globally. RegTech users must build flexibility into their compliance culture. Whether you're a bank in New York or a fintech startup in Hong Kong, the ability to pivot quickly when the rulebook rewrites itself is now a core competency. Conclusion: toward resilience and compliance. Rapid regulatory changes are a fact of modern life. They can be disruptive and costly, But they also underscore why RegTech exists in the first place, to act as a buffer between overwhelming complexity and an organization's ability to comply. As reported by the World Economic Forum, RegTech has the potential to streamline compliance and even serve as a universal tool for navigating fragmented global regulatory frameworks. To realize this potential, both providers and users of RegTech must cultivate resilience. In practical terms, navigating uncertainty means combining the strengths of machines and humans. Machines, through real-time data, AI, and smart design, can react at lightning speed, catching changes as they happen. Humans, through expertise, judgment, and communication, can interpret nuance, prioritize responses, and handle the exceptional cases. Neither can manage this challenge alone. We've seen how a sudden tariff or a court injunction can throw off the best-laid compliance plans. But we've also seen that companies are meeting the challenge. Banks that update their sanction filters the same day new lists come out, or software that toggles rules when a judge presses pause on a law. Going forward, expect RegTech to further embrace agile methodologies, perhaps even predicting changes, using analytics to foresee what regulators might do next, and preparing in advance. In an age of uncertainty, those who thrive will be those who expect the unexpected. RegTech users can take comfort in knowing that the industry is learning from each jarring regulatory jolt. The playbook is growing. Monitor relentlessly, architect for change, fail-safe your systems, and never assume the rule today will be the rule tomorrow. By adopting these principles and tools, organizations can stay a step ahead of the next rapid change, or at least not be caught flat-footed when it arrives. Ultimately, navigating regulatory uncertainty is becoming a skill unto itself. It's a journey of continuous adaptation. And if there's one takeaway from this deep dive, it's that uncertainty may be inevitable, but being unprepared for it is not. With the right mix of technology, strategy, and foresight, RegTech users can turn regulatory chaos into manageable complexity, ensuring compliance no matter what twists and turns come next.